Welcome back everyone, and welcome to the channel if this is your first time stopping by. I did a video like this quite a while ago. It was just a run through of all the Mustangs that I've owned in the past, but this one is a little bit different. That video was done in order of how I've acquired them over the years, from year to year. This one is more along the lines of ranking them as how much I've liked them. And this isn't based just on which one made more power or which one was newer with better tech or anything like that. It's mostly based around how much did I enjoy the vehicle while I had it, the amount of time that I owned it, the things that I did to it, my projected long-term plans with it, stuff like that. So that's pretty much how I'm framing this as far as how I rank one above the other. And of course, power does come into play with some of these, as you'll see when the video gets going. But we'll get right into it and we'll start ranking these from the very first one. Now for a total, there's been 6 Mustangs that I've owned from my very first one to my current one. And ranking number 6, the one that I like the least, the most unimportant one out of all of them, was this 1994 V6 Mustang. I didn't have this for like a really long time. And I didn't buy this as a project car to build or anything like that. And of course I had an anemic V6 from 1994, so there really wasn't anything special about it. It was just a commuter car to get from point A to point B, and that pretty much summarized the use that I did with this car. There was some slight exhaust mods that I did to it, but it wasn't anything really worth talking about. Strangely enough, as we go through this list, you'll see there's like an increment of power throughout some of this. The order isn't in terms of power, that's for sure, so that's not why this is at the bottom. But I bring that up because strangely enough, this is the least powered Mustang that I've ever owned, going all the way up to my most powerful one that I currently have. But this V6 was the only engine that I ever blew up, strangely. The reason why that blew up was a stuck thermostat, so that's like my crowning achievement with that car, is that I did blow up a V6 Mustang, but it was because of a stuck thermostat. So we'll move away from the V6 at the very bottom of the list and move on to number 5. Coming in at number 5 is this 1993 Fox body that I had. A lot of people will be wondering why I rank this so low, being that a lot of people would love to have a Fox body. And one thing I want to mention before I get into the Fox body too much, this current photo of this car and the one of the V6 aren't the actual cars that I owned. These are ones that I just pulled off the internet because photos get lost over time and over the years. So I don't currently have photos of these cars anymore. So these are just stock photos pulled from off the internet. But the reason why this Fox body ranks so low is the amount of time that I had it, which wasn't very long. The plans that I had with this car was to put a 408 stroker in it and pretty much just build it to be a really powerful NA type build, but those plans never materialized. And I bought it down in New Jersey one summer. I remember driving it back from there up to Maine where I live. I drove through New York City. The car was overheating. It sucked really bad. It was a horrible trip. But I didn't have the car for very long, and for that reason, that's why it ranks so low on the list. I would love to have a Fox body again, to build, one like this, to do, maybe finish those plans that I had, something like that. But that didn't happen with this car, so the amount of time that I actually had it and the fact that I didn't really do anything with it is why it ranks down towards the bottom at number 5. Also, this last picture of this Fox body, this was like my long-term goal of what I wanted this car to eventually be like. But like I said before, it just never came to that, so that's why this one ranks where it does. This was my 1995 GT. I did a lot of work on this car. I bought it completely stock, so any of the mods you see on this car was stuff that I had done to it. I added a set of Steeda Ultralight 2 wheels on it, which I think were amazing wheels. Still to this day, I think they're amazing looking wheels on a Mustang. I added the Steeda rear wing and Cervini's front bumper, and some other, modifications here and there to it. Added the Paxton Novi 2000 supercharger. Did that in a friend's garage. We did the clutch and the supercharger install over, however long it took us. It was quite a while ago, so I can't remember the time frame. But it was a really cool car. I mean, it was fun to drive around and it made decent power. I think the final power output for this car with the Paxton was about 350, which wasn't bad for just basically a stock 5-liter with exhaust mods and a supercharger thrown in, and had the Cobra intake on it. So that was, it definitely helped and made a really fun street car. And I did race it quite a bit at the drag strip. I think I got into, I don't know if I ever ran 11s, not 11s. I don't know if I ever ran 12s with that car or not. I can't remember. It was a really long time ago. I may have. But it was pretty cool the amount of time that I had. I eventually did sell that car before moving on to, future projects to work on. Now, this brings us to number 3. The problem with number 3 is that number 3 and number 2 are extremely interchangeable. It will vary from day to day which one I put at number 3 and which one I put at number 2. But for the purpose of this video, I decided to put my 1994 Cobra with a 351 Windsor out of a 1995 Cobra R into the number 3 spot. The only reason I put this at number 3, even as cool as it sounds and all the mods done on this car that I did to it, is the fact that it's not out of the box, out of what I previously owned. It's another SN95. It's another red Mustang. So it's really hard to put this higher on the list when number 2 and number 1 are very... Number 1 is definitely far better. Number 2 is more special to me. But this one I owned for a very long time. Did a lot of modifications to it, suspension-wise, power-wise, chassis-wise. I have several other videos on my channel on this exact Cobra, the entire mod list done to it. I did drag race this car quite a bit. I did break into the mid-12s with it, being NA. So if you do want to go back, there is a playlist specifically for this car. If you want to go back and look at some of the driving videos, some of the exhaust videos, other things like that. I've covered this car quite a bit, so I'm not going to go too in-depth over the mods and everything else. But for the purpose of doing this video on this day, it does fall at number 3. So now a lot of you are probably wondering what's number 2 that knocked off the 1994 Cobra. And this would be my very first car and my very first Mustang that I ever owned, being a 1996 Coupe. I got this in high school. I believe I bought it for like around $3,000. My parents co-signed on a loan for me, and I drove this for a while in high school. Didn't really do any mods to it, but the reason why this car ranks so high is because it's the only classic Mustang I've ever owned, and this is the Mustang that started everything for me. If it wasn't for getting this car, none of these other cars probably would have followed. I probably wouldn't have fallen in love with the Mustang platform and the Ford platform to this day to get me to where I am with what I currently own and everything that I owned before it, all these other ones that you've seen. So because of that, that's why I put this car so high, is because it really set the whole premise for everything with, modding cars. And there was a few things that I did to it, nothing too extensive, but it was, I almost still remember the smell of that car driving around in it. It was just really, really cool to have a car like that. At that age, I was only like, 16, 17 years old, as you can see from one of the photos here. But that's it. That's my 1996 very first Mustang and very first car. So now we'll move on to number 1. And for those of you that are familiar with the channel, you're not going to be too surprised at what's at number 1. And coming in at number 1 is my 2004 Terminator Cobra. Being that this was a bucket list car for me for so long, in that these cars are becoming extremely popular with a lot of people wanting to get them, and the fact that I wanted one for as long as I did, and the power this thing makes is just unbelievable. This has to be number 1. You can't have a history of owning Mustangs, one of them being a Terminator Cobra, and not have this at the top, unless it's something way over, the realm of what the Terminator is as far as being special and everything else. Those of you that follow the channel know this car puts out 700 at the wheels with a VMP Gen 3R, a few other modifications done to it. I realize that I've picked up a lot of subs over the past several months. Plan on doing a complete 100% mod list on the Cobra. A lot of you know about the supercharger, like that, some of the more recent things, but not a lot of you know about the stuff the car already had when I first got it, except for the people that have been following for quite a long time. So I plan on doing an update video a little bit further down the road in which I'll cover all of that stuff, all the mods done to this car. This car will probably remain my number one for an extremely long time. I don't know if I'll ever get anything that will top having an 0304 Terminator, but if I do, it'd have to be something extremely special. We'll have to see what the future brings. It's always possible. There are other cars I would like to get. That would knock this off the number one spot. Hard to believe. But we'll have to see if those plans ever come to fruition or not. That will conclude this video. If you want to know more about the Terminator, I have an entire playlist on this car. So feel free to go through that if you're new to the channel and look through some of those videos of any of those that you want to watch. This video would be extremely long if I went over everything about the car and why it's just amazing. That was just a quick recap on why it's so awesome to me. But if you're new here and want to see more content on the Terminator, make sure to sub. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave it a like. It really does help the channel out, and it also helps me to one day become the sole ruler of the metaverse. Thank you for watching.